Do you still love me or not?
Hi, I'm King. This is Frankly K, where I do journal with me's, book reviews, financial literacy videos, and vlogs. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please take a moment and consider subscribing and leave a like so that I can continue this financial literacy work most of all. But her mic is on. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, sorry about that, I forgot to turn the mic on. But like I was saying, there's some news in the financial world that you probably already heard. I only want to talk about two very specific things. I'm going to start with my pet peeve and then get into some, important news. So my pet peeve right now is how, we have been steamrolled basically into a mess. I don't know how else to put it, but it's a mess because first of all, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, I have talked about what they do on here, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Have I talked about what they do here? If I haven't, I should have, because there's somebody who at the baseline, they do exactly what their name says. They are responsible for a lot of the investigation that happens into very large banks and non-bank lenders that may do loans and everything. They're one of the reasons why subprime loans got the flack that they did, because they were discovered as predatory thanks to consumers reporting things and the data and stuff collected by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And that, because this is their whole job, is basically to rein in money sharks. So that's what I would like to call them, to rein them in and hold them accountable against government compliance and just basically doing what's best for the consumer as much as they can within their scope of power. Now, the Congress did give them the power to regulate, or at least basically enforce compliance among banks over a certain amount. I think it's 10 billion. So that would be like the very large banks, which we all know need some regulation. They were one of the people that helped reform student loans, especially from people getting private loans. Navient, if y'all remember Sally Mae, one of the people that started the whistleblowing on what was going on. It was part of the CFPB and then some other institutions. Obviously, a lot of people work in tandem. It's never like a one thing effort, but since they are basically the seating people for checks and balances, things do have to go through them a lot. They do a lot of, like I said, investigations into predatory loans, predatory lending, non-bank financial institutions, so like payday loans and all that stuff. The only reason why payday loans and some other like financial non-bank financial institutions have lending caps is because of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Things like that. Like the reason why if you are at a very large bank, your overdraft fees disappeared, and that was largely due to local work and the enforcement of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Those kinds of things. They're the reason why medical debt, I believe, a lot of things have to go through Congress and Senate, so it gets blocked a lot of times depending on who's running the Congress, who has what agenda for their seat in office. A lot of things, they still have to go through a legal system. They're not like the Federal Reserve where they're just like completely autonomous and, set the things and you have to do them. But it's still someone that has to go through legal action. But the point is they get these things in motion. The reason why medical debts under $500 are expunged from your record. Now, honestly, I think they worked to get medical debts removed altogether, but they settled for that $500 or less. Anyway, stuff like that. So the bottom line is that these are the things, they're part of the checks and balances in the financial world when it comes directly to consumers. So of course, now that we have a Russian bot and an upside down pineapple cake twinning for president, they have put in just a bunch of their corporate friends and a bunch of their tech girlies in these positions that honestly they have no business in, but everyone just let this happen because I think they don't think it's going to affect them at the higher government levels such as Congress and Senate and stuff. They think it's not going to affect them, but it will. They have let them in. What did he put? He put his friend, what's his name? I wrote his name down over here. They put Russell Vaught in charge of the CFPB, and they got the people working, the employees working for the CFPB got stop work order notices, as in they were supposed to stop everything they're doing. And because he can't shut the thing down, right, but he can basically hinder them from doing anything at all. All of that is on a halt. They're all very anxious. Apparently they had a lot of, I read from the New York Times, I think it was a lot of anonymous employees that were basically saying they're very uncomfortable with the way things are being run, like these stop notices, and then I think they were told to get put on leave or something like that. Hold on, let me check my notes. So especially if it's basically the consumer's middleman, you know what I mean, or their representative, their liaison into this financial industry. So people making these complaints is kind of what sets off the trigger for them to get into, you know what I mean, a whole investigation or put together a task force or a strike force to really get into the details of what's going on so they can compile these reports. Or basically it's kind of like the Better Business Bureau. Once you make a report, you may notice that you don't get a response from a company right away if you try to contact them directly. But if you happen to go through the Better Business Bureau and then they post that thing, suddenly the company wants to talk to you. It's kind of like that. And it wasn't just but it's not for businesses in general. It was for financial related businesses, like, you know, okay, loans, banks, mortgages that are held at banks, non-bank lenders. Like I've said, all those things. Yeah, because it was created by Congress. And then let's see. Oh, yeah. And I forgot, I wrote down that it also has the power to penalize companies for breaking compliance rules. And that's very important because you can have all the rules in place in the world, but if there's no one there to enforce or penalize people or enforce the penalization of these, I shouldn't even say people, of these institutions, the people who work there, obviously, but it's the institution as a whole getting penalized, then it really doesn't matter to have the rules because you can just not follow them. Like if somebody is just like in your house, if people are like, do the dishes when you were growing up and you didn't do them and then no one ever said anything to you, you'd never do those dishes if you didn't feel like. I hate to say it because I've worked in this industry or whatever, and I feel like people at banks care, especially the ones that you work with face to face and some higher ups and everything. But as a whole, a lot of banks operate, they are a for-profit business, and so profits seem to come before everything else when you get into the larger scale banks. I think that's why people like moving towards community banks and stuff, because they're supposed to not be putting profits, and that's why they use credit unions, because the profits affect the members, because when you're a member of a credit union, you're also a shareholder of the place. So it makes it a little more profitable to, do what the shareholders and the members, like the people banking there, want in those smaller institutions. But once you get to the really big, large banking institutions, they get a little, honestly, they get a little Wild West. I don't know how else to put it. And so someone's got to be there. And in the CFPB, it was basically the sheriff and the deputy. And now they basically had a business guy who probably has been affected by the penalization because of something wrong he did on the consumer side. It was probably great for his business, but terrible for the people banking at his business. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure he has direct interests in shutting down basically a whistleblower. Financial world now, they're silencing whistleblowers in the financial world. Someone as large and as effective as the CFPB, the whole reason, like the only reason that they keep saying it's run amok and it's out of control. They just love the word that things are out of control. And every time they say that, I feel like it's the pot calling the kettle, you know what I mean? And I don't feel like the CFPB is out of control. I feel like they were exercising their rights to the fullest capacity, but they were still going through all these legal channels. That's why a lot of things that they have tried to do have been getting pushback, and they have to settle, and they have to make all these agreements, and things take forever because people tie it up in litigation. And the whole reason is because you have people who are greedy and they're fighting against them. And the whole reason you're going to say someone's run amok is because you've run amok and you don't like the fact that they've caught you. It's like a cheater. When a cheater randomly just starts accusing their partner of cheating and you're like, well, where did that come from? It's because they're cheating. That's how I feel about these people whenever they're attacking something that does consumer good or public beneficial entities. Every time they're always the one that's run amok. No one else seems to be running amok except these things that defend the public. And honestly, he's being really unprofessional because I heard he put like CFPB RIP on his Twitter, and I'm just like, you're the director of the CFPB? Like, talking about RIP? Like, again, he can't legally just shut it down, but he can halt production, he can halt work, he can lay off people or at least call for their resignation and then see what happens. Yeah, that's the first topic. It's very distressing because I feel like in this country, right, I'm in the US of A, okay, in this country, consumers and the everyday man do not have a lot of protections against businesses and corporations and them doing what they are gonna do. We don't have the most protections against it on a daily basis. So they set up these agencies to keep it so that at least the rules that are put in place get enforced. And that's basically the only incentive that these corporations and companies have to do what we would call the right thing, because it won't negatively impact the general public. And this was one of the big ones. This is one of the heavy hitters. This was our Jackie Robinson. There's a bunch of little unseen things that they did. Basically, the overall presence matters. It's like having an authority figure in your home. It matters. They don't have to be yelling or screaming or punishing you or anything like that. But just knowing that they're there, watching, that's that. On the other side of things, it's good and bad news. It's not, I don't think it's bad news. People were trying to make this a very worrisome thing, and it might be worrisome, but not particularly, because basically the bottom line is it's about credit and the new FICO 10, FICO 10T, FICO 10T is basically the updated scoring system where there's going to be a lot more predictive based scoring. So they're going to be taking your information from the past 24 months or something like that and really using that to predict a pattern, or exact, maybe not predict. Yeah, I say predict a pattern. They're going to assess that, predict a pattern for your future, and then basically your credit score is ranked on that, whether you're going to be a high risk or low risk person, and then your score fluctuates in between, you know, poor, fair, good, and excellent. So the thing about it is it's going to score heavier negatively on if you are someone who carries credit card balances over month to month, or you do not pay your bills consistently. Also, people who open lots of credit, you will probably get scored heavier for somebody who's a little higher at risk because you're like opening credit left and right. So basically, they are cracking down a little bit on things that for years people have said are things you should try to avoid doing in the first place if you're trying to build or maintain good credit. So if you've been practicing, if you have a credit card at all, keeping that balance at zero, using it, right? Because you need credit utilization. That's part of your score, but using it but keeping that balance at zero as often as possible by the time the cycle is ending, so that when they assess your bill, they can see that it's at zero. That's what you want to do. That's optimum. You should do that, or at least keep it the lowest you can, because maybe you can't pay it all at the same time, but keep it as low as possible. They always say keep your credit utilization under 50%. That's the goal. So if you have a total of $500 credit, you want to keep your utilization at 250. Now you might go to the 500, but at least get it down to 250 at some point within the month. And then if you really can, get it all the way to zero before your cycle ends. So that way it's assessed with a zero balance and you don't look like you keep carrying balances over month after month. Now, once in a while it might happen, and I don't know how hard they're going to penalize one-off situations. Like if it's like once every couple months, it might not get penalized as hard as somebody who is constantly carrying over. Maybe like some people have some, really large credit card debt. And so it could be like $8,000, $10,000 they're carrying on month after month. So of course, maybe they cannot pay it all down at the end of the month, right? Because maybe it was some sort of emergency. A lot of people put medical things on their credit. If they have or had good enough credit, you could get a card for maybe 10,000. Somebody like Amex will give out like 10,000, 5,000, and you use it for your medication or you use it for hospital bills, especially people who take lots of medication on a daily basis or have to go in and out of the hospital for whatever reason. Some people put something like the light bill, an electric bill on credit because those be so high. Whatever it is, there's a reason. It's not always just people are out shopping and using their credit misbehavingly. Like I don't like when people automatically assume that of people. I personally do not have any credit cards anymore. I think I've only ever had like store cards and stuff like that, but to have like a credit card, I've never been a big fan of it. And I got my credit utilization in other ways, like because I had loans, especially I had large student loans, and that's already just enough for me. So you have to know what's right for yourself, and don't assume you know exactly what's going on with others when they tell you they have credit card debt, because you don't know why they have the credit card debt. You know what I mean? You can only assume, and assuming does nothing for either of you because you're not going to help them fix it. So I don't even know why you're assuming in the first place. So anyway, if you are somebody who has high utilization or high balances that carry over, just try work. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? There's no reason, honestly, to be scared. I can't tell you to not be scared because you're going to feel how you're going to feel, but there's no reason to think that you need to be afraid and that this is going to ruin your life. Because honestly, yes, it might drop your credit 20 to 40 points. That's going to happen if you're struggling, to keep off those balances, or you've been struggling to make payments because of whatever reason. With all the recent layoffs and stuff like that, a lot of people are struggling to keep up with payments that they might have been doing really well on these last couple months. They thought they were having things under control, but now your day-to-day bills, keeping you not homeless, is what's prioritizing over your debt. So once you're able to get your footing, is what I would like to say. Once you you can't do anything about the credit drop. You can't. It's either going to analyze you as somebody who is high risk and drop those points, or it's not. The point is, your points can't stay dropped forever unless you just ignore it. All right. So always be aware, where awareness and clarity means power. What you're doing month to month about your debts. Only you can determine how much you can spare to pay on your debts. Now, a lot of debtors will take very low payments, especially if you're having a hardship thing. If you're like me and you basically your main debt is student loans and medical bills, like because they're over like $500, which in this country, be serious, most medical bills are going to be over $500. So if you're somebody like that, or you're similar to me, they do take a lot of times they take very small payments, especially student loans. So keeping that, even if you're just paying them $5 a month, I promise you it matters. Like, but you have to tell them. You can't have your bill saying you owe $230 a month and then you only pay $5. You need to tell them that this is how much I can pay. You tell them, they're going to try to haggle up as much as they can, because I think the people who work there, they probably have a quota they have to meet numbers wise. Like, they're probably told something like, you need to get as much as you can, right? So they're just doing their job. But basically, you can only do what you can do. And if it's $5, if it's $3, if it's $27, if it's $200, you give them what you can and just but as long as you keep that payment going month to month, then that payment, the fact that you're paying your balance on time, it doesn't matter if it's a small balance, you're working towards it. And once you're able to pay more, you pay more. But yeah, this new scoring system is nothing to be intimidated over. If you just apply, work steadily at what you're doing, then the credit will maintain, or it would even see an increase, because that's the other side of this. If you've been doing all those things, you should see a little bit of bump in your score, because they're predicting that you're going to continue these good habits into the future. Now, again, if you're not able to have good habits in the past, maybe you just started your good habits, so it's going to be reading a lot of information that doesn't look good. It'll feel discouraging when you see that drop. I have a feeling I'm going to see a drop because the way things went last year, I missed a couple payments here and there, things that, because I was prioritizing, like I said earlier, daily life bills. You know what I mean? And then I had medical bills that jumped on there. That really affected things. So a lot of things can happen at any moment. And my advice is just to not be intimidated by the new scoring system. And especially if you're someone who was just starting to really get your footing and you've just started making your good conscious decisions about paying down debt, maybe not carrying over any balances, really making sure you're not going around applying for a lot of different loans or credit cards, even secured cards. Just don't apply for credit all bunched up together. And I know that's hard, because when I was looking for a condo, there was a lot of people pulling my credit at the same time. And they had said when you do it in a 2-week span, it wouldn't affect your credit, but it did. Oh, you live and you learn. You live and you learn. So that I'll give you that as well. So just be very conscious and very picky about who and where you're going to apply for credit, especially if your credit is on the, I would say, anything between good and poor. Like if you are maybe 670 and below, so that's still good, but and fair. I think fair is in there. So good, fair, and poor. If you're in those credit rankings, I would be extremely picky right now going forward about where you try to open credit. And I know, ironically, that's my biggest pet peeve though, is that people who need the credit are penalized for trying to get the credit. But that's a whole other topic, right? No one just opens credit for the fun of it. Well, I in my head, most people, right, who don't have really good credit, you're not opening credit for most of it. You need it for something. Maybe there's an emergency and you're like, if I could just get this personal loan, if I could just get this auto loan, especially now, because a lot of jobs keep telling people they have to drive. You have to do what you have to do. If you're looking for those kinds of credit, I would say limit it to like one place a month. And I feel like that's even too many, because it's still a monthly thing. So really look for a place where you think you might have a real chance. If you go into a bank and you ask them like, what's the lowest credit score that you've seen approved for a personal loan. And depending on, but the thing is, each bank is different, and the people there, they don't really have a number to give you because it's so many behind the scenes factors. They're not the ones deciding it. It does go in the system and go into back office, and then you have a team of people that are assessing credit worthiness and stuff, like underwriters and everything. So that is its own process. So they might not have a real number to give you, but some people might have like their own estimate because maybe they're one of the bank employees that takes a lot of credit applications for credit cards or personal loans or mortgages or auto loans and stuff. They do a lot of that because that is something that is usually on your like sales docket. Like the stuff you have to do is get a certain number of referrals and everything like that. So they will always, most people will take the application if you want them to, because it's their job. In my experience, I would say certain bigger banks, they are really a lot stricter about who they lend money to. And so credit scores, they gotta be like kind of high. And I've even seen people with kind of high credit scores get rejected, and it was more along the lines of, yeah, their credit score was high, but maybe they didn't make a lot of on-time payments to the bank, or they already had a quite large loan with the bank that often was made late and stuff like that. Like their utilization might be too high. They don't have a lot of information that is favorable to say that giving them more money is going to benefit the bank in the long term. So, I mean, again, like I said, you can have high credit score, but if you don't have good practices, you might still get denied. And then in this new scoring system, you can have a high credit score right now, but if you don't have good practices, that's going to start to reflect on your credit score. So I would also say for people who are comfortable right now skipping payments and blah, 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 and it hasn't really affected your credit score too much, I would say try to get those habits under control, so that you can maintain your good credit, because I think it is going to be harder to increase scores, but I don't think it's going to be significantly harder than it has been. Like if you're someone who's been working on your credit score, you know how hard it is to get those points. So like every 3 points matters. Like you're looking at it all the time, and any little dip can feel like 8 steps back, So but just don't get discouraged is really what I want to say. Credit journey is a hard and long road. So you don't want to just get off the road, don't be discouraged. It's okay to feel sad and feel a little down, because I know when you see it, if it happens to you, I'm hoping it won't happen as severely as people have predicted. But, I expect nothing and hope for the best. But if it does happen to you, I would just say, just keep trotting along, you tiny tortoise, you're in a race, okay? And the tortoise, he wins in that story every time. So be that tortoise, slow and steady, as best as you can. Okay. That is all for the news today. This was a cheerless episode of Financial Literacy with King, and I'm sorry. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informative, and I hope it left you less terrified or less anxious about what's going on. If it didn't make you any less anxious, I'm sorry. But yeah, I hope, take your time and sit with the news and really just understand that things take time. Everything takes time. It may feel like it's happening all at once, but it's because we're not seeing any of the behind the scenes time. Things be happening for months. So there's always a chance that you can stabilize yourself, or at least get yourself ready for the push. You know what I'm saying? So that's all. Bye.